but as long as we are able to go through and understand that it is a high point category, that's the big key factor there. Or if it's midpoints, to be 2 to 3 and 0 to 1. What you'll start to notice as you go through all the different applications there as well, there'll be sometimes that you're able to give half points or full points. These point breakdowns were what were provided to us at Nationals this last year, so that's why we try to keep things as simple and consistent as they are at Nationals. So hopefully this will be able to help keep some consistency in terms of scoring there as well. Because I remember last year judging, going through and figuring out, well, how do you get like a 0.66 on a score there, but trying to keep things simple and easy and accessible for all the judges there. So the biggest piece of advice is making sure that as you're going through, use the rubric. That's what it's there for, and be able to help figure out high points, mid points, and no or low points. And we're going to spend some time talking about that here today. And then be sure to be comfortable and confident with the score sheet there. Again, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask myself, Mindy, John, or anyone else who's judged National Chapter Awards before, because we'll be there to be able to help out. Again, you can give partial points, but just make sure you try to follow the score sheet options, because at the end of the day, if you're over-analyzing it, you're probably looking at either giving them points or you're questioning yourself if you're not there. My kind of rule of thumb is just go with your gut. If you're spending more than 30 seconds debating on a certain score to give these different applications, you're probably more likely going to be awarding those points to the student than actually taking those points away. And if the information is there, they earn the points. Again, so just make sure that you're being clear and consistent with your selection choices there. Okay, as we kind of said earlier, looking for ways to award students points, not necessarily deduct them there. So we kind of talked about the high points, mid points, and low points. Again, these point values are kind of more set up for the activity descriptions right now. But when you look at your actual rubric that we talked about here already, that we showed you guys, that rubric, if you follow it in terms of what high points means, mid points, and low points in terms of the point values, that will help you out there as well. Any questions so far based on the rubrics or the score sheets as well? Going once, twice. All right. So what we're going to kind of do, and what the kind of goal for the remainder of this is kind of go through some actual examples. So what we've done with this presentation here is we've actually pulled activity descriptions, goals, and different parts of applications from National Chapter Awards. So we're going to kind of show you some examples here, and what I'd like you guys to be able to do as we kind of get to our own examples here is to be able to write down in the chat box whether you would call it a high point, midpoint, or low point. So if you have the ability to be able to pull up the National Chapter Award rubric to go through it, that would be beneficial, but we'll talk about it here as well. So the first thing that we're going to look at is the activity description. So the description clearly explains the purpose and reason the chapter is implementing the activity. Description clearly answers the following questions. What is the purpose of the activity, and why is the activity taking place? Okay, so again, this is what we're looking for high points, is that the activity description should tell us the purpose of the activity and why the activity is taking place. So here's some different examples of what you could possibly see for activity descriptions. These are the examples that are provided straight from National FFA. So the example for high points, FFA members notice students discouraging their peers and others struggling with self-esteem. Operation Beautiful is designed to promote and improve mental well-being, self-esteem, and positive character traits for members. Members are encouraged to pay it forward through positive message boards, random acts of kindness, and thank you notes. So as we're reading through that, I can see the reason why they're hosting the event is because FFA members notice students were discouraging their peers, and the purpose of the event is to make sure that we're improving the mental well-being, self-esteem, and positive character traits of those members. Okay, so that's the example of high points. On the opposite end, if you look at the no points or low points area, when we look at Operation Beautiful was a series of events used to promote positive things to our members. So that, to me, is a very vague and general activity description. I'm not 100% sure why that activity is taking place, and I can maybe justify the purpose, and the purpose would be promote positive things. But what is a positive thing? Okay, so that's activity descriptions. So the first one up for practice, this activity description is under the healthy lifestyles category. So FFA officers came up with the idea of an Ag Olympics during National FFA Week for junior high students. All activities were agriculture-based and made all members of the team compete in each activity. 5 events took place with 5 teams competing. Events consisted of sheep herding, barn fire, tug of war, egg gathering, and hungry, hungry heifers. So ladies and gents, if you guys could take the next 20 seconds or 10 seconds or so to be able to tell me in the chat box whether you think that's high points, mid points, or low points. You don't have to give an exact point value, but would you call that high, mid, or low or no points? Okay, as we're kind of getting some of the responses in here, majority of people are saying midpoints, and that's something that I would agree with. I think when you're looking at the middle point side of it, even on the rubric, it says the description is vague and the purpose and the reason the chapter is implementing the activity. So I can see that the purpose of this activity is an Ag Olympics to be able to do a bunch of different events. But what's not really answered here or provided to me is why is the activity taking place. So for me, that would be a midpoint area. So again, when you're looking at the midpoints, it's your job. You can either give it a 2 or a 3, but the big key factor is if we're able to see that's midpoint, that is a good thing there. Okay, another practice for activity descriptions. Appetite for Agriculture is a farm-to-fork dinner that showcases agriculture within our community. In partnership with the Farm Bureau Young Leaders, a local stakeholder, we worked as a team to conduct a program featuring a 3-course meal and educating roundtables to develop a cooperative spirit among our organizations. So as you take some time there, again, go ahead and try to chat or write down in the chat box if you think that's high points, mid points, or low points. Donna, Jenny, and Hayden definitely rolling in here pretty strong. Yeah, so this is definitely one that I would consider high points. And so one of the things, too, that we want to point out is that you'll start to see that there's a lot of different formatting options in the National Chapter Award. One of the common things that you'll start to see that's recommended through Nationals is also kind of like highlighting different aspects of the rubric that's going to be in the part that you want to emphasize. So what really sells this part to me is even if you take out the purpose and the why that is in the parentheses there, I can still see what the purpose of this activity is, and I can still understand the why. And so for this reason, it's clear that, you know, the why is that they're trying to create this cooperative spirit among organizations. They're working with their stakeholders, and the purpose, again, is to showcase agriculture within their community. So again, it's fairly clearly laid out what the purpose and the why is. Again, that's high points. Again, if you want to say it's 4 or 5, up to you. SMART goals. For the goals side of things, it definitely can get a little bit interesting. Again, we're looking for stuff that's specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and timely. One of the biggest things that at least in my opinion, is that you'll start to see is that there is no time on some of the goals here. Again, these are some examples. A high point area, you know, FFA members will post 600 positive messages around the ag building to help promote self-esteem by January 31st, 2019. So it's specific, we're posting 600 messages in the ag building. We're measuring it because we can have those 600 messages. We know exactly how many it's going to be. This does seem realistic. It does seem attainable, and there's a time of by January 31st, 2019. Again, if you look at the SMART goals at the low end, FFA members will post positive messages. When we start looking at that one, I don't really know what's being measured. I don't really know when it's going to get done.
Time to work.
Let me just get something.
All right. So we look at some SMART goals. So this is a safety activity for a SMB event. So FFA officers blank and blank will contact local farmers and co-ops in order to obtain one farming implement to be delivered and parked at the high school for the event, or for the event attendees to sit in and visualize blind spots by 4/6. So in the chat box, go ahead and say, do you think that's a high point, mid point, or low point for the goals? Hello to you too, Nick James. Just kidding. Now, as we're kind of rolling through here, so majority has it for high points, and so this is something that I would agree is a high point area. So when you start looking at it, the who is being specific in terms of, you know, the FFA officers, and we blocked out the names of those students there, but again, it's specific in terms of those who's going to be accomplishing the goal, and when the goal is going to be completed by was 4-6. What we are measuring is that they need to obtain one farming implement. So that one farming implement is what we're measuring there. Some chapters you'll notice want to use numbers there. Some are just going to type it out. It is whatever the preference is there. But when we start looking at it, it's specific, it's measurable, it's attainable, realistic, and there's a time stamp with it as well. Okay, we look at the next goal here. Healthy lifestyles, activity. Again, it's looking at another academic deal. Donna, I think your microphone might be on a little bit there, potentially. But so we look at the goal here, or that we have, again, to promote, sorry, I copied this earlier, promote being healthy and fit by competing in a rigorous team event. The events are somewhat challenging and can be rigorous in nature. So by looking at this activity description, high, mid, low. Okay, as we start seeing them coming in already, yes, low points here. Again, there's, I don't really know what's being measured here. We don't have a specific time it's happening. We don't even know who's in charge of this goal. Again, when you start looking at specific or SMART goals, when you're judging your applications there, if you have a SMART goal, it's going to be a lot easier to write a plan of action. It's going to be easier to judge it. If you don't have a SMART goal, the plan of action is going to be a little bit challenging there as well. Plan of action. So plan of actions, when you start looking at these, again, we need to figure out what needs to be accomplished, where the activity is taking place, how the chapter will implement it, how the goal will be accomplished, and who will perform the duties. This is the one that is probably the most offers the most variation in terms of formatting or styles. I'm going to show you 3 different options here, and in Illinois, the most common formats are going to be styles 1 and 3. So the biggest thing is when you're looking through it, you're not judging the formatting of an application. Again, you're judging is the information there. So again, it just kind of comes down to personal preference in terms of how you want to format it. So just keep it in mind. So some examples of these the different styles. So the first style example, again, when you're looking at it, it's just on January 8th, 2019, the Healthy Lifestyles Committee members will meet to make a display poster and write 600 positive messages. On individual Post-it notes, notes will be placed in the Operation Beautiful display area in the Ag Building, High School, and Middle School, January 21st to the 25th, 2019. So that's just an example of high points. And then we have a lot of chapters that will go through and even highlight the who, the what, the how, the when inside their plan of action there as well. Or another format that's fairly popular is listing out the who, what, how, when, and where in the plan of actions there as well. So again, as long as the information's there, that's the big part. So make sure to not be biased in terms of the formatting there, but just ask yourself, is the information there as well? And I'm not going to go through it, but examples of midpoints and low points there as well for us to be able to go through. So here's some practice ones. So the goal that we have is to have officers evaluate their personal goals at the end of the year with new officers to see if they accomplished their goals. So the plan of action is, at the last officer meeting before the chapter meeting to elect the new officer team, students will go over their original goal sheet completed a year before. The officers will share with the group each of their goals, and if they attain them, they are also encouraged to speak about how easy or hard it was to attain their goals. So when we look at this, would you say this is high points, mid points, or low points for the plan of action? We got one person chiming in. I'll let you guys have a little bit more time. Again, this one's a little bit more challenging, for sure. So go ahead and take some time and see if you're going to put high, mid, or low. Again, yeah, so as we're going through, this would be a midpoint area for the plan of action. Again, it does cover a lot of information, but when you look at the rubric, a lot of it's saying it's just vaguely written, and this is vaguely how the plan of action is written. One of the best pieces of advice I got when judging at nationals was when you're reading the plan of action, you should be able to give that plan of action to anyone, and they should be able to accomplish that goal just by reading the plan of action. So by reading this plan of action, to me, I have a general idea of how they're going through things, but it's not necessarily laying out every single step that I need to be able to take in order to accomplish the goal. Again, the goal itself started off as kind of vague, and so the plan of action was vague as well. Again, so this would be an example of a midpoint area for the plans of action. For outcomes and evaluated reporting, again, this is one that can get kind of interesting because there is no emphasis on the rubric on if you did not meet a goal, if you met a goal, or if you exceeded it. When you're starting to look at something, again, you should not be docking points for a chapter who did not meet a goal or be awarding points to a chapter who exceeded a goal just based on the merit alone that they exceeded, or deducting points just based on the merit that they unmet their goal there. But the key is if all aspects of the SMART goal were met, okay, so you're saying you met your goal, all aspects of the SMART goal were met. If you're saying that you exceeded it, okay, you're going to say by how much if you exceeded the goal by. If the goal was unmet, we want to be able to make sure that there is some kind of explanation of why it was unmet and what's going to be done differently next time to meet the goal. One of the most common reasons why I've seen an unmet for goal is that the event is taking place after the deadline to turn in a national chapter award for Illinois, but it still happened within the date range of their application. In my opinion, this year we'll probably see a lot of stuff that's unmet because of the coronavirus or COVID-19. So make sure that when you're reading it, you're not going to deduct points just because it says unmet, but make sure that if they do say unmet, the reason why they're unmet is explained and what would be done differently. Same thing if exceeded. It says if they exceeded by how much. So, for example, on high points, we're talking about the Operation Beautiful again, where they want to do 600 post-its of positive affirmations around the school. They exceeded the goal, and bulletin boards in the school were used to display notes for students to take. Over 650 notes were written and shared. So our goal was to have 600. We had over 650. Again, that tells us that we exceeded it. But an example, if we're looking at the low point side of things, we exceeded. Bulletin boards were used to display positive notes. So yeah, we were saying that we exceeded it, but we're not knowing exactly how much by we exceeded that goal there. So again, it's still important to have all those parts of the SMART goal in the outcome and evaluated area there. Didn't have any examples for that one there. I don't know, for some reason the slide got deleted, but we're going to keep rocking and rolling. The next couple parts of the National Chapter Award application are considered in the summary. And so what you'll see in your application is not just the word advancing, but it'll be advancing communities, advancing leaders, or advancing agriculture. And so when you start looking at the rubric in terms of how we're looking at this in the advancing area, the response clearly states the purpose of the activity and the benefit the activity had on the leaders, community, or agriculture. So if you're judging growing leaders section of the National Chapter Award, on the summary page, you should be looking at how the purpose of the activity and the benefit advanced leaders. If you're looking at the building community section, again, how the purpose and benefit advanced the community. And same thing for agriculture. So how the purpose of the activity and benefit advanced agriculture. So again, high points, the purpose of Operation Beautiful was for members to learn about why positive character traits are important, now how powerful pay-it-forward actions can be. The activity advanced leaders by encouraging improvement, mental well-being, and self-esteem for our members. However, our chapter and community were also affected due to the positive pay-it-forward activity there. So it's saying that the purpose of the activity, again, was to promote positivity, to pay it forward, and the benefit not only on their chapter, but in the community there as well. Low points, again, members felt good about the positive affirmations they had. Okay, for practice, the purpose of this activity was to get our chapter an opportunity to give back through community service around our area. It benefited the community by having relief packages ready to be sent out to those in need of nourishment. Some of those food packages were shipped to a community nearby, which was suffering from a flooding problem. We were happy to do our small part in helping meet their needs. So in terms of advancing, I believe this is advancing communities. Would you call this high points, mid points, or low points? Go ahead and type that in the text box. All right, as the results are coming in, I'm seeing some variation, and I think that's for good measures. So for me, when I start looking at the advancing community side of this, to me, this is high points category. I would say it's on the lower end of the high points side, but when we start looking at it in terms of the rubric, it does say the response clearly states the purpose and the benefit of the activity. So as I'm reading it, I can see that we do have the purpose of the activity, was to get their chapter an opportunity to give back to community service around our area. So we have our purpose. And it does say how it benefited the community by having relief packages ready to be sent out. So in terms of the rubric, it's nice to see that the words that we're looking for that are in the rubric are in the application there as well. It is fairly clear. Is it the most in-depth answer? Probably not. Like, could we give maybe some numbers or give some different specifics there? Yes, but that's not what the rubric's asking for. We do see a purpose and a benefit to the community there. So this would be high points, at least in my opinion here. Okay. For impact, again, so we're looking at the impact response clearly identifies and describes how the impact of the activity affected its intended audience. So one thing I do want to point out that I forgot to point out earlier is that on the summary side of it, for the advancing community side and the impact side, the point values are slightly different. So they're up to 6 points for that area rather than activity descriptions were 5 and goals and plan of actions were 3. So just know that the point values do change. So when we're looking at impacts, again, so we're looking at identifying and describing how the impact affected the intended audience. So for high points, again, here's an example. Our members' actions truly made a large impact on each other, our school atmosphere, and our community. Community members enjoyed being recognized for their support and appreciated being on the receiving end of kind actions. Many members even continue to pay it forward. So when we're starting to look at how this clearly identifies and describes the impact, I have an idea that we're kind of quantifying it by saying there's a large impact. We're saying that they're being recognized and supporting each other. Many members even continue to pay it forward there as well. The intended audience here, again, we're looking at our community members. We're going from the low point side, members' actions made an impact on each other and lots of other people. So again, when we're looking at that side, it's not necessarily clearly identifying or describing the impact of it, and nor do we know who the intended audience is. So for the impact here, let's go ahead and take some practice. Everyone notices and comments on how much nicer the billboard is than how it was. It was one of those things that welcomes you to our community. We feel that it also thanks our community for all that it does to support the FFA. 27 members and 4 volunteers have helped with the billboard effort. So in the comment side, if you guys want to say if it's high points, mid points, or low points, that would be greatly appreciated. So very good. As we're starting to see things coming through, I would definitely agree this is a midpoint impact statement. So when you read the rubric side, it's vaguely identifying and describing how the impact of the activity affected the intended audience. So when I'm reading it, I'm like, okay, so we can see that the billboard is nicer, but how are you justifying that it's nicer there? Like, how are we measuring it? It's one of those things that welcome you to the community, so I'm assuming the community is the intended audience there. Again, just kind of vague. It does give us some information, like 27 members and 4 volunteers, but definitely a vague impact there as well. Related to quality standards. So this is one here that is really the only point at the application where it says, like, here's the quality standard and here's the activity and how it connects to it. So one thing I do want to point out on that link that we put inside the chat box there is a copy of the link to National's website. If you have not done so, I would suggest taking a look at the National Chapter Award Divisions and Quality Standards. It's also on your score sheet there as well in case you oh, never mind. That was for round 1. But I would take a look at the quality standards from the National's website to be able to see what leadership, healthy lifestyle, scholarship, and exactly those quality standards represent. And so making sure that you are able to correctly identify that it meets those quality standard areas there as well. So again, that's a resource that I would definitely take a look at. And as you start going through the national chapter work, you'll start to see some similarities. And you'll start to be able to see or be more confident in your selections there as well. So when we're looking at relating to our quality standards, again, the activity and benefits relate directly to the selected quality standards. So regardless of what the quality standard is, the activity and benefits directly relate. So if we go back to the example FFA provided us with the Operation Beautiful, healthy lifestyles were encouraged through Operation Beautiful as students intentionally promoted confident mental well-being, self-esteem, and positive characteristics. So when you go back to the healthy lifestyle, so it's reminding me of healthy lifestyle, and you go back to the quality standard indicator sheet, it even does talk about mental well-being and self-esteem on that quality standard sheet there. So it does make it a little bit easier to say, yes, this does match that quality standard. Whereas you'll see probably a good number of times in terms of quality standard, Operation Beautiful encourages healthy lifestyles. Not necessarily 100% sure on exactly how it relates to the quality standard. Again, when you go through the quality standard list that Nationals provides, there's key words and phrases there that I would make sure to take a look at there as well. I don't have any examples in terms of the related to quality standard besides what was there from Nationals. So it's one of those things that I would just suggest when you're going through it that you talk about or you use the time to be able to read the quality standards from the Nationals website there and make sure that it does have the key parts to each quality standard in that area there if you're looking to award it high points area. In terms of photo and the photo caption, I do have some examples here. So for the photo, what we want to be able to see is a clear, high-quality photo illustrating the chapter's activity and action is displayed. One rule of thumb that I kind of try to think about is as you're reading the activity, there should be an idea or a mental picture of what that activity is going to look like. And so for me, as I'm reading the application, does that picture match my mental image of what I was imagining while I was reading that application? So that's one way you can kind of look at it. But make sure it's interesting, informative. There's no repeat photos in the application. And one of the biggest things we want you to be able to take a look at, photo collages are not permitted. Well, also if you have any screenshotted photos, like it looks like it came from a kid's Snapchat on their phone, also flag those as well. But again, photo collages, it should be one photo for each deal there too. So this is an example of students who went to a Northern Illinois food bank to package food. So when in the comments there, what I'd like you to be able to tell me is, do you think this photo is high points, mid points, or low points? So if a high point photo is saying a clear, high quality photo illustrating the chapter's activity in action is displayed. And as we see them coming rolling in here, yes, low points, okay? The only thing that tells me that they're at a food bank is that there's the word food bank behind it. So yes, definitely bonus points for the pink hair there. I love it. So again, we want to try to see some kind of action shot. So here's a picture from an SMV event. Again, we're trying to teach students about the importance of slow-moving vehicles. Do you think this is high points, mid points, or low points? Okay, again, as they're starting to roll in, this would be one that I would say is low points. How do I know that this isn't just a picture of a kid that's just driving a tractor on the road and not necessarily at the school? So this is, again, going to the same SMV event here where we see some kind of car parked behind a tractor pulling an implement. There's kids standing around. Would this be an example of a high points, mid points, or low points picture? Okay, again, we're seeing some variation between high and mid points. I would definitely agree. I'd say it would kind of determine or depend on what the application read and talked about in terms of what they were doing there. But what I would say, why I'm leaning towards a high points photo or high points area on this picture is because it's more of an action shot. Now, are we seeing kids climbing in tractors or in cars, or what is this group of people doing here? No, but it's at least not like a staged kind of photo there that we don't really know what's going on. We do know that there's a tractor, there's car behind it, kids and adults involved, so it's giving us some kind of idea there. So higher mid points, I would say to make that final decision, it would come down to what you read in the application there, but it'd be the low end of the high or the high end of the midpoint based on how you read that application. Okay, so here's the photo caption for those pictures. So if you look at the rubric for the photo caption, it says a caption that clearly describes the activity is used is high points. Okay, so SMV, slow down, move over, and visualize is an event designed to teach the upcoming generation of motorists in driver's education and intro to ag classes at CHS the importance of safety, sharing the road with farming implements during planting and harvest season. Pictured above is one group of students taking turns drawing the blind spots found sitting in the tractor versus sitting in the car following it. This activity helps students understand that farmers may not see them when they are following farmers and how to address this issue. Do you think that photo caption is high points, mid points, or low points? Okay, as we're seeing some of the comments come in, yes, this would be one that we'd call high points because, again, when you're looking at it, it's not just saying, pictured above is a group of students doing this. It's telling us a little bit more about the activity. So, again, the idea of a photo caption is, like what I try to look at is that when you're looking at the photo and the photo caption itself, if you were just to open up the application or go into a magazine and you saw the picture and the photo caption, would you be able to say, I know what was happening here? So that's kind of the big part there to be high point. So here's another photo caption going with the same picture. Pictured above is a group of students sitting in a tractor and looking at the car and tractor from the outside. Students had a great time learning how to be safe on the roads. Okay, what would you call this? High, mid, or low? Okay, between mid and low. Initial impression for me was low points, but when we start looking at it, I could say that the purpose or the describing the activity that happened is that they're learning how to be safe on the road, so that part could maybe push into mid, but again, first impression here is low, so one of the big things is just making sure that you're being consistent in terms of your judging there. In terms of spelling and grammar, so this one is one that I know a lot of people have talked a lot about in terms of the National Chapter Award. To earn 2 full points on spelling and grammar, there's no errors or slight errors. The midpoint is there major errors in spelling and grammar, and no points means that there's excessive errors there. So this is an example of one that you should be able to select half points for as well. Use it to your best judgment there on what you think for spelling and grammar, but again, refer to the rubric as well. Questions so far on how to go through the different parts of the application, because all we have left is talk about deductions, and we will get that done rather quickly. Questions going once. Sold. All right, so for deductions, these are kind of the big areas in terms of deductions to look for: duplication of quality standard, no quality standard marked, replication of activity, activity date out of range, multiple activities in one, or collaborative activity replication. Every single deduction is 25 points. Is when included in the plan of action? No, when is not included on the rubric on the plan of action. So when you read the rubric from Nationals, all you need to know is saying what needs to be accomplished, where will the activity take place, how the chapter will implement the goal, how will the goal be accomplished, and who will perform the duty. So some chapters, like for myself, our chapters always put in the when, but you do not need to have the when in the plan of actions. Good question there, Andy. Again, it's 25 points for deductions there as well. I'll say more than likely, from my experience, the ones that you'll probably see the most in terms of deduction-wise is going to be an activity date out of range, multiple activities in one, or collaborative activity replication. The reason for the duplication of quality standard or no quality standard mark is really because AET doesn't really allow you to finish or print off your application if those aren't checked there, or even the replication of an activity within the application if you're just copying things over there. So we'll kind of go through some of these examples here. There also is, I believe, we'll share out a cheat sheet deal to be able to take a look at it. But the biggest thing is on your score sheet for your deductions at the bottom of it, there should be an area for you to be able to say that here's a deduction and what it is, and the committee will be able to take over and make the final ruling on the deduction there as well. So you're not responsible for taking off the 25 points for the deduction, but if you are able to notice something, make sure you flag it at the bottom of your score sheet. We'll go through it. So multiple activities in one. When you're looking at it, the biggest thing is that it sounds like there's multiple different activities in one activity there. Most commonly, what you'll try to, or what we'll see when you see this deduction going to happen, is that each goal is kind of a different activity in itself. So, so here's a leadership example. Goal 1's having at least 10 FFA members attend the National FFA Convention in October to explore more opportunities and require them to participate in workshops, career shows, and attend sessions. Goal 2, have at least 8 members attend and compete at the state leadership CDEs. And goal 3, have 3 chapter officers attend the leadership camp. So yes, they all have to do with leadership, but in terms of the national chapter award, we're looking at one single activity at a time. So this would be an example of multiple activities in one, and we would flag that for a deduction there. Now, it is possible that you could have one overarching activity and have all these different mini activities that build upon one another. But if the biggest key factor is that these activities, in terms of the goals, they should be reliant upon one another. They should be able to say, like, the overall goal and activity would not be able to take place whatsoever. We would not be able to develop leadership skills if goal 2 or goal 3 was gone there. So here's an example of personal growth. Have 100% of chapter members involved on a chapter committee over the 2017 FFA year, compete in career development events of 2016. I should update these dates. I apologize there. And or 4, having complete records and compete for proficiencies at the state convention in 2016. Train and have at least 25% of our in-school members compete in the spring CDE at or above the state level. And goal 3, have all members accurately and thoroughly fill out the record books on the computer and ag classes. So one thing that's interesting here is, depending on how the activity is written out and the overall justification here, it could be multiple activities in one deduction or not, but it just kind of comes down to how the activity is written there. Because at the end of the day, these 3 activities all kind of focus on a similar aspect in terms of CDEs and their SAEs part of it. So in terms of how they wrote it, that would be the personal growth, but this would be one that I would just flag and have the committee take a look at later on. So the biggest thing is, for the deduction process, if you think a deduction is necessary, mark yes. On the application, the review committee will determine if there's a deduction or not. So the biggest thing is, we want you to be able to make sure that you are familiar with the deductions and be able to just flag them to make sure that the review committee can take a look at them as well. And so to go through the deductions, one of the biggest things in terms of activity date out of range, I want to make sure I point out to you guys, is on the very first page of the National Chapter Award, is that it will have a selected date range. Every chapter can select their own. In Illinois, it's most common to go April 16th of like 2019, let's say, to April 15th of 2020, because those are the deadlines for the National Chapter Awards, but a chapter could do January 1st to December 31st. So the biggest thing is, in order for you to double check that activity date out of range, make sure that you look at those dates on the application. One of the big things is that it's possible to have a goal of a goal with a date that takes place outside of the activity date range, but the activity itself, the overall activity, needs to happen during that that time period there, because some activities and events are definitely going to take more than 1 year, depending on the size and scope of those activities. Collaborative activity replication. So collaborative activity is going to be where you see more than one chapter doing the same activity. So we do encourage, in terms of FFA, chapters to be able to work together. But the biggest thing is that if 2 or more chapters do one singular event, that when you're starting to look at whether it's collaborative activity or not, there should be definitive different roles. So basically what we don't want to see happen is chapters basically say that we did the exact same thing at this event. Where we want to be able to say, okay, these chapters might have done the same activity, but there is clearly 2 different roles that they had there. So those, again, are 3 of the more commonly deductions that you'll see there. Again, there's just a lot of ideas there as well. So we went through a lot of information very, very quickly. Are there any questions right now? Seeing none, I'm going to say this. This went a lot faster than our round one there, Mindy. But
Buddy,
again,
there is a question. Is when included in the plan of action?
Yeah, we talked about it a little bit, but no, when is not on the rubric for the plan of action there. So you should not be taking off points if when is not included. But some chapters will have it, some chapters won't have the when there in the plan of action. Again, a couple of the biggest tidbits of fact that will help you out is I would have a printed copy of the National Chapter Award Form 2 rubric with you. When you go over your first couple of applications for round 2, it would be beneficial, at least in my opinion, that you read what a high points is and then be able to ask yourself, okay, is this high points or is this low, mid points or low points? Do that for the first couple activities that you're going through, and then sooner or later you'll know this rubric by the back of your hand, and you'll be able to go through it there. Andrew Klein's asking, if chapters did not make it to round 2 judging, do they automatically get bronze? That's a question for Mindy. Oh, question for Mindy there too. Yeah, I'm going to turn that over to Mindy and John.
So I had, it's so fun when you post out stuff on the listserv because you always have to prepare yourself to be, your inbox to be flooded. And I have had quite a few people ask maybe why they didn't make it to round 2. And as I went back and looked at the sheets, as we do round 1, you have to answer 159 questions, yes or no. And so there's a threshold, and it's different every year because it's based on the number of yeses and nos that the judges give. But if you are in this category where you have both judges giving you beyond the threshold of no answers, you don't advance to round 2. Typically, that puts that most of the time, that puts that one in the bronze category. However, there are times when there are so many no's that requires us to go in and look at it, and it could just be superior. But for the most part, if they were in round 1 judging, where they weren't Form 1 only, and wanted to advance to round 2, but only stayed in round 1, most of the time they are bronze. There are a few cases where they do get ranked superior. The next question was, what kind of picture do we want chapter to submit for national chapter recognition? You can submit, what we're asking you that you do is submit one for building communities, one for strengthening ag, one for growing leaders, and one for overall premier chapter. So really, for any of those, you could submit a chapter photo like that you have, like it's similar to maybe a yearbook photo or a banquet photo or a national convention photo, whatever best photo that you love or you feel like reflects your chapter, you can send that one for the premier chapter. But for like the building communities, growing leaders, strengthening ag, I would submit one that maybe has the activity that your chapter likes the best, represents you or that activity the best. So we are asking that you submit 4 photos. And if you want to submit to us 4 photos that are all like big group shots of your kids so that you can try to get as many of your kids' faces in those photos, that's great. We just really want them to be reflective of the chapter and not just a couple kids. That's a great question, Nick James. Thanks for asking that.
Very good. Yeah, and one final thing for everyone while we're here, again, just as kind of like the big takeaway, one of the biggest things while you're judging the National Chapter Award for round 2, have the rubric with you. We ask that you just follow the rubric, and it's up to your interpretation. Our goal for tonight was to be able to go through and to be able to say, here's some ideas of what high points, mid points, and low or no points are. But again, the biggest thing is make sure that you're consistent with your interpretation of the rubric. We've given you some kind of lead points there, and please try to stick to the provided point totals that are in the scans or the spreadsheets or score sheets that you have with yourselves there as well. I know if you have any questions, feel free to email myself. I'll be willing to help you out there as well. And then I believe Andrew put another message. What's the timeline for releasing results? Last year, I think we were notified of national finalists before convention. I know, typically speaking, May 17th that week is when we get the results, and if we're national finalists, gold, bronze, silver. But I'm going to turn that over to Mindy on the timeline for releasing results this year.
Well, I don't have my video on because my signal, I just don't have enough strength. But as soon as I read the question, I'm just grinning from ear to ear. You can imagine the smile on my face. Oh, I'm just going to make myself even more popular because as we discussed with the FFA board about our convention virtual attendance, we are going to hold national chapter results until we announce it the week of virtual convention, which will be the week of July 20th through the 23rd. So I have to look what day we're doing national chapter. John might be able to remind me. Is national chapter the 20th?
21st.
It's the 21st. So we're going to announce national chapter results the evening of the 21st, and those are all going to be surprises. Section winners and state winners and national finalists. All of those are surprises. So then the ultimate question is, you're killing me, Smalls. Yes, I know I'm killing you. Yeah. But the next question is, oh, what about the national deadline? Isn't that after the national deadline? That national deadline has been kicked back to either August 1 or August 15th. That really does allow us plenty of time to continue to send the final pretty national application on to National FFA. So we are going to keep that a surprise this year. Any other questions? I just really, again, want to thank, well, and the biggest reason, somebody said fun, and I hope you do mean that fun, because I think our big thought was that will try to drive those numbers up of people attending. And if there's any goal that I have, that John and I have, that all of us, the FFA Center have, the FFA board has when we discuss this virtual convention, is that we can drive as many people to that virtual convention as possible. As you could imagine and put yourselves in the shoes of these award winners, proficiency winners, stars, state degree recipients, they're your students, you know, they deserve better. They should be able to have their face-to-face celebration, but they can't. So the fact of the matter is, we want to try to drive as many people to virtual convention and celebrate our FFA members' successes, and be there to support our officers who are delivering their RA to a screen instead of the membership, and to our newly elected officers who are going to be elected virtually. So we are going to use every carrot we can to drive people to be checked in and tuned in to virtual convention. So I know it may be killing you in the short run, but in the long run, we feel it's better for our virtual convention attendance and better for supporting our officers and our students with all their accomplishments and successes. So there you go. All right. Well, I will talk to you. We are doing a state chat on Thursday. If you're anxious to learn more about some of the IVAT updates I posted today, or the alumni updates that I actually was meaning to post tomorrow but out today, we're happy to talk with you on the state chat on Thursday at 3 o'clock. Same number, same voices, and lots of answers to your questions. So thank you all very much for joining us today, Buddy. Great job. You're just excellent at this. I really appreciate the time you put into it. And just thanks, everyone. We will talk to you later, and have a great rest of your day.